Do you ever get that feeling like you're just wading through life,
Oh, yeah.
tangled in, I don't know, a million different things, responsibilities, worries, desires,
Definitely, yeah.
and you just can't quite see clearly or figure out how to, get free?
Yeah.
That sense of being overwhelmed.
It's a really fundamental human thing, isn't it? That feeling of being, well, bound by stuff we don't fully grasp,
Yeah,
not sure where we fit or how to move through the world without getting totally lost in it all.
absolutely. And you, our listener, you actually sent us this fantastic stack of sources, articles, papers, even your own notes, because you were grappling with exactly this. And you found some ancient wisdom that seemed to speak right to it.
Which brings us here.
Exactly. So today, we're doing a deep dive into the Bhagavad Gita, specifically chapter 15.
Sometimes called the yoga of the supreme person.
Right. And we're drawing a lot from Sri Aurobindo's essays on the Gita as well, based on the material you provided.
And this isn't just, abstract philosophy.
Right.
The material here, it gives us these really powerful images, concepts. They're designed to help us understand existence itself, really.
And who we are within it.
Exactly. Our true identity and maybe a practical path towards, well, freedom.
So our mission, let's say, for this deep dive is to unpack the most important insights from your sources on chapter 15.
Okay.
We'll look at this amazing analogy for the material world, try to uncover the secret of the soul, understand the ultimate reality it describes.
And the way out.
Yeah, and look at what these texts suggest is the way out of that tangled mess towards connection with the divine.
It's about getting a different perspective, maybe a higher one, using this ancient wisdom.
Okay, so let's dive in. Chapter 15, it kicks off with this image that just, wow, grabs your attention straight away, this eternal Ashvatha tree. What's going on with this tree?
It's probably one of the Gita's most potent metaphors, actually, for the material world, the one we experience.
Yeah.
Verse 1 describes it, but it's paradoxical. The roots are above, it says, and the branches are below.
Roots above.
Yeah, the inverted tree, it's often called.
That completely flips how we think of a tree. Where are these roots supposed to be anchored then?
Well, the sources are pretty clear. They point upwards to the supreme being.
Yeah.
So this tree, this whole structure of relative existence, the world we see and touch, it's not ultimately rooted in matter itself.
Okay.
Its roots are in the divine reality, the ultimate source. That's the first big insight, The material world isn't self-sufficient. It comes from something higher.
And the branches spreading out below, what are they?
That's the vast expanse of the material universe, kind of reaching down into our human world. And verse 2 adds something crucial.
Which is?
These branches are nourished by the gunas.
Ah, the gunas. We talked about those sattva, rajhas, tamas, the qualities of nature from chapter 14.
Exactly.
So the energy, the qualities that drive our experience, our actions, our moods, that's what feeds this cosmic tree.
Precisely. Chapter 14 explained how the gunas bind us as individuals.
Right.
Chapter 15 uses this tree image to show what that binding environment fundamentally is. It's this huge kind of illusory structure kept going by these very qualities. And the branches, your sources mention, have sense objects as buds.
Sense objects, like the things we see, hear, taste.
Yeah. Our sensory experiences, all driven by the gunas, they make the tree seem solid, real, substantial.
So the things we chase after, the experiences we get through our senses, that's what makes the tree look so alive and full.
That's it. And then down here in the human world, there are these secondary roots extending.
More roots.
Yeah, described as bound by actions, karma anubandhini.
Karma, actions.
Our actions, especially when they're motivated by desire, by the pull of the gunas, they create deeper roots. They tie us more and more firmly to this material plane.
So that's where that feeling of entanglement comes from.
Yes. Constantly feeding and rooting ourselves deeper into the structure that isn't even permanent, all through actions driven by the gunas and desire.
Okay, wow. So the tree is this whole picture material existence, rooted in the divine, but it spreads out and traps us through our actions and these gunas. How on earth do you deal with something that huge that seems so solid?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the chapter tackles it head-on.
Ow.
Verses 3 and 4 say, look, the true form of this tree, you can't really perceive it here. You don't see its end or its beginning clearly. It just feels permanent.
Yeah, it does.
So the solution offered is pretty radical, having cut this firm-rooted Ashvatha tree with the strong axe of detachment.
The axe of detachment, not just trimming leaves.
Real.
It's about cutting it down. at the root, but like in our awareness.
Exactly. Detachment from the material world itself, from constantly chasing sense objects, from needing the fruits of our actions, from identifying completely with the pull of those gunas.
Okay.
The insight is that the tree seems firm-rooted because we are holding on to it, we're attached. Detachment is the only tool strong enough to cut that connection in how we perceive things.
Freeing yourself from the illusion that this is all there is.
Yes, that this material existence is the ultimate reality or, your true home.
And once you've used this axe, where do you go? What's next?
Well, the sources say the goal is to seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns.
Never returns.
And crucially, there's surrender to that supreme being from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Ah, so detachment isn't the final goal.
No, it's the essential first step. You detach from the illusion to then turn towards and connect with the ultimate reality, the supreme. It's like a complete redirection of your whole being.
Okay, so the tree explains the big picture, our entanglement. But what about us? The ones trying to, swing this axe. Who are we in all this?
Right, and that's where the chapter shifts focus to the nature of the individual soul.
Okay.
Your sources really highlight verses 7 to 15 here, calling them the secrets of the soul. And the core idea is our divine connection, our eternal nature.
So the fundamental truth is that we, as individuals, as conscious beings, we're internal parts, like fragments of the Supreme.
That's the profound statement. Verse 7 puts it beautifully. An eternal portion of myself, Mamaiva, having become a living being in the world of life, draws to itself the five senses and the mind, which have their seat in nature.
Mamaiva, an eternal portion of myself.
Yes. So even though we find ourselves in these material bodies with minds and senses going all over the place, our consciousness, the actual I at the very core of our being, is a spark of the divine. It's eternal, indestructible.
That's huge, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed.
It is. Your deepest self isn't this tangled mess. It's actually pure, simple, divine.
But we don't always feel that way. We don't perceive it.
Exactly. And verse 10 speaks to that. The deluded individuals fail to perceive the soul as it departs or remains or experiences the objects of the senses.
The deluded, meaning most of us, most of the time.
Often, yes. But then it continues. But those who possess the eye of knowledge can behold it.
The eye of knowledge, what is that? Is it just book learning, reading philosophy?
The sources suggest it's more than just intellectual understanding. It's a cultivated inner perception, a spiritual wisdom, you could say.
Okay.
By deepening our understanding, maybe through practices we can talk about, we kind of awaken this eye.
And that changes everything.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective. It lets you see the truth. That the spiritual reality, our divine origin, is the real root and substance of existence. And when you see with that eye, the illusion of the material tree, however dazzling it seems, starts to lose its grip.
So understanding the tree is illusory and recognizing your soul is eternal and divine. They're like two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Both help liberate that eye of knowledge.
Which leads us where?
Well, it leads us to the absolute peak of the chapter's teaching, the nature of the supreme person, Purushottama.
Purushotama, best of all persons, or supreme person, right?
That's it. So while earlier chapters, like 14, show how to get beyond the gunas.
Right, transcend them.
Chapter 15 reveals who the ultimate refuge is for those who manage to do that. Lord Krishna explains his supreme status. He's the source of memory, knowledge, forgetting. He's the essence of all sacred knowledge, the consciousness dwelling in everyone's heart.
And the sources point out a really key distinction here. He's described as being superior to both the mutable, perishable beings caught in matter
Vapshara.
and the immutable, imperishable self, the liberated soul that's withdrawn from nature.
Akshara, yes. And this is where Sri Aurobindo's perspective, drawing from these sources you sent, becomes really, really insightful.
How so?
Well, some traditional philosophies might focus on the goal being for the soul, the Purusha, to realize it's eternally separate from nature, Prakriti, and just escape it.
Becoming the Akshara, the silent, unchanging self.
Right. The Gita acknowledges that state, the Akshara, but then it introduces Purushottama as a higher reality still.
So liberation isn't just about becoming that silent observer detached from nature.
Not according to this integral view that Sri Aurobindo highlights. The Akshara is indeed that silent, untouched self. The Kshara is the active being caught up in nature.
Okay.
But Purushottama is both of those, and also beyond them. He is the divine Lord, the Ishwara, who actually manifests his own active nature, prakriti, and puts forth parts of himself as the individual souls, the jiva.
The jiva.
Now,
That's the individual soul we talked about, the mamayava aisha, the eternal portion.
exactly. And see how this changes the picture. The soul isn't just some passive witness trying to escape nature desperately.
Yeah.
It's a portion of the divine that has actually entered into nature's play.
Okay, that's a different way of looking at it.
It means true freedom isn't just inactivity in that silent self. It's about acting from that divine nature, fully integrated with the supreme. Purushottama is free even while being totally engaged in the universe.
Wow. That seems to bridge the gap, doesn't it? Between being detached and being active in the world.
It really does. So the path isn't just about intellectual knowledge alone, focusing only on the akshara, nor is it just about selfless works.
What else is central?
Devotion, bhakti yoga, devotion to this supreme person, Purushottama, recognizing him as the ultimate reality, the source of everything, and developing pure devotion. That's described as leading to the highest spiritual state.
Okay, this is all incredibly profound. Understanding the tree, the soul, the supreme person.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back down to earth, back to that feeling of being tangled, overwhelmed. How do you actually apply this? How do you use that axe of detachment?
Right, the practical side. The sources suggest a path that weaves all these insights together. It takes conscious effort, an inner discipline.
Yeah.
Think of it as actively reshaping your relationship with that material tree and with your own true self.
What kind of effort are we talking about?
Well, it starts with cultivating that spiritual wisdom, the eye of knowledge we mentioned.
How do you do that?
Through practices. Regular study of texts like the Gita, really contemplating their meaning. Sincere chanting, maybe, or repetition of sacred sounds. Mindfulness or meditation practices.
Okay.
These things help you see the impermanent nature of the tree more clearly, and they strengthen that realization of your eternal soul. Take meditation, for instance. It's not just about quieting the mind, though that helps. It's also a practice of deliberately withdrawing your awareness from all the noise of the lower branches and roots, and anchoring it instead in that higher reality, the divine source above. You're actually practicing detachment by shifting where you put your attention and what you identify with.
And detachment. Doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent, does it?
Not at all. The sources talk about wise detachment. It's detachment from the things that bind you, craving specific outcomes, being totally identified with the gunas push and pull.
And devotion helps with this.
Immensely. It's fostered by devotion. When your focus, your love, your energy is directed towards the supreme, the pull of the material world just naturally starts to weaken.
So devotion gives you the inner strength and focus you need to actually use that axe of detachment effectively.
Precisely. And selfless service is another practical tool. Acting without being attached to the reward.
Ah, karma yoga.
Yes. It helps loosen those roots that are tied by action, the karma anubandhini. When your actions are offered to the divine, they stop creating new binding roots in the material world.
This also seems to connect back directly to transcending the gunas, which Chapter 15 follows naturally from 14.
It does. The sources really emphasize that liberating yourself from the lower nature means moving beyond the dominance of rajas, that restless activity and passion and tamas, inertia, ignorance, dullness.
Okay.
The path often involves cultivating sattva first, purity, light, knowledge. Sattva helps calm down the noise from rajas and tamas.
But it helps you see more clearly.
Yes, it can better reflect the light of spiritual reality.
So developing qualities like clarity, self-control, staying balanced, being kind, these are actual practical steps on the path.
They absolutely are. They prepare your whole being for a higher transformation. But the ultimate liberation, which the Gita describes as putting on the divine nature, sadharmya, it isn't just escaping the gunas into some kind of impersonal quiet zone.
What is it then?
It's about becoming one in your very being, your consciousness, and even your nature with the divine, with Purushottama.
And someone who reaches that state, united with Purushottama, they don't just sit there, right? They don't stop acting.
This is the really profound outcome of this integral path. The liberated person doesn't stop acting. Not at all.
So what happened?
Instead, they act from that divine consciousness. Their individual will becomes aligned with the divine will.
They become like a channel.
Yeah.
For divine action in the world.
That's the core idea. It involves surrendering everything, all your actions, and eventually your very nature into the hands of that inner divine presence, Purushottama.
Awesome.
Then the divine will itself acts through the transformed individual nature. This is described as the high secret, the mystery of how you can act in the world and still remain completely free. How you can participate fully in existence, but be liberated from its bindings.
So the practical path involves, wisdom, detachment fueled by devotion, selfless action, getting beyond the lower gunas by developing higher qualities,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately surrendering your own will and nature to the divine, letting the divine act through you.
Yes.
It moves you from being tangled in the branches of the tree to acting from the very source that roots the tree.
Exactly. It's an integral yoga. It unites knowledge, works, devotion, and it leads to the state of conscious union, which is actually capable of divine action right here in the world.
Okay, let's try and quickly recap some key takeaways from your sources in this deep dive. We started with that really powerful image, the Ashvatha tree.
Right, the tree of material existence. Roots above in the supreme, branches below, fed by the gunas, binding us through our actions.
And the way forward starts by consciously using that axe of detachment, cutting our attachment to this seemingly solid but ultimately illusory structure.
And turning our focus towards the ultimate source, yes.
Then we explore the nature of the soul, recognizing it as this eternal, divine spark or fragment of the Supreme, different from our changing body and mind.
A truth that becomes clearer as we cultivate that eye of knowledge.
And we saw Lord Krishna revealed as Purushottama, the Supreme Person, the ultimate reality containing both the changing and the unchanging, our final refuge, the consciousness inside everything.
Mm-hmm.
The sources point to a practical path, building spiritual wisdom through study, contemplation, practicing wise detachment, which is really supported by sincere devotion.
Engaging in selfless action, working to transcend the lower gunas by cultivating higher sattvic qualities.
And drawing on Sri Aurobindo, we saw this liberation isn't just an escape hatch, it's an integration.
Exactly, aligning our actions, our very nature, with the divine will that is active in the world. Recognizing that existence includes struggle, transformation. It's part of a deeper principle at work.
The path of integral yoga, uniting all these different parts of ourselves.
It's about moving from being, helplessly tangled up to consciously aligning with and surrendering to the divine within you and in everything. Learning to act from that place of wisdom and freedom.
Trusting that higher wisdom, that higher power to guide you, even when things get messy, complex, conflicted.
Which they inevitably do.
Right. And your sources leave us with a pretty potent final thought to consider, especially thinking about Sri Aurobindo and the battle of life. They suggest that the actual battle, the conflict, the destruction we see in the world, it isn't just random awfulness.
No, it's seen as an outward sign, a manifestation of a deeper, maybe more challenging divine principle playing out.
One source actually quotes, "Christ and Buddha have come and gone, but it is Rudra who still holds the world in the hollow of his hand."
Rudra, that fierce, transformative, sometimes even destructive face of the divine.
So, given all the struggles and conflicts that are undeniably part of our world today, and this idea that the divine includes both the friend and the destroyer, it leaves you with a big question to sit with.
A challenging one.
How does understanding the divine as active in all aspects of existence, even the really difficult ones, change how you try to align your inner self and your outer actions? What does it actually mean to surrender your will and act from a divine consciousness when that divine play clearly includes intense conflict and transformation?
How does the wisdom of Chapter 15, this whole framework, guide you in navigating that complex reality today?